Hi, and welcome back to the Wellbe podcast. This is your host, Adrienne Nolan-Smith. I'm a board-certified holistic patient advocate, and my goal with this podcast and all my other work with Wellbe, which you can check out at getwellbe.com, is to empower you in your health, helping you avoid chronic symptoms and diseases, and helping you heal them as naturally and holistically as possible when they do come up. This week, we're about halfway through season 6 of the Wellbe podcast, and we'll be talking about the MTHFR gene mutation in this episode. Before we jump in, if you like the Wellbe podcast and you haven't yet left a review, it would mean the world to me if you do so now. You don't even have to stop listening to this episode. Just scroll all the way down on the Wellbe podcast page in your app and click Write a Review. Give me a few stars and a few words, and then press submit in the top right-hand corner, and boom, you're done. I read every single review, and they mean so much to me, so I would really appreciate it. All right, now let's talk about this MTHFR gene. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's pretty complicated, but really fascinating. As I explored in depth in my interview on epigenetics with Dr. Jay Goodbinder, your genes are not your destiny. However, your genes are one of the primary factors that determines your health and risk factors for certain conditions. One particular gene that's been getting a lot of press recently is the MTHFR gene, with curiosity steadily rising as at-home genetic testing has boomed. But as with most things related to our health, there are a lot of misconceptions about it. This episode should clear them up. I'm going to be talking about what it actually means to have an MTHFR mutation, MTHFR deficiency risks and symptoms, whether or not you should get an MTHFR gene mutation test, the best MTHFR supplements, and much more. All right, so one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that MTHFR is a gene. It's not. MTHFR is an enzyme that breaks down the amino acid homocysteine and converts folate into a form that's usable for the human body. When people talk about the MTHFR gene, they're talking about the specific gene that gives your body instructions on how to produce the enzyme MTHFR. As with every gene out there, different MTHFR genes can have different DNA codes. When part of the DNA sequence of a MTHFR gene varies from what's expected, it's called a variant or a mutation. If you'll remember from high school biology, each gene is actually a pair of two alleles, one inherited from each of your parents. So if you could have an MTHFR gene with a mutation from just one parent, called heterozygous, or from both parents, called homozygous, or from neither parent. Simple enough, right? I know allele and homozygous are all terms you probably haven't heard or thought about in a while, but I like to think of it as a red, yellow, green stoplight. So green is you have neither mutation from either of your parents. Yellow is you have a mutation from one parent, which I just referred to as heterozygous. And then red is you have mutations from both your parents, which I referred to as homozygous. So bear with me, it gets a little more complicated than that. There are actually two locations on the MTHFR gene known to have variants. This means that it's possible for a person to have mutations in both locations, one location, or neither, and to be heterozygous or homozygous in either. The two different mutations in question are C677T. This is a mutation at position 677 on the MTHFR gene. Approximately 25% of the global population have this mutation, with those of Hispanic descent being most likely to carry it. Then there's the A1298C. This is a mutation at position 1298 on the MTHFR gene. Less is known about how many people have this mutation, and there's also less known about its implications for a carrier's health. There are other mutations on the MTHFR gene, as there are many potential variants for either gene. However, when you hear people talk about the MTHFR gene mutation, they're talking about these two variants. If you have either or both mutations, it will impact your ability to produce the MTHFR enzyme, leading to an MTHFR deficiency. First off, it's important to note that there's not one set of MTHFR gene mutation symptoms, the way there's a list of symptoms for, say, strep throat or the flu. Rather, having one or more of the MTHFR gene mutations has the potential to impact your body's ability to produce the MTHFR enzyme, which causes MTHFR deficiency, which can have health repercussions. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about the symptoms, risks, and other health complications in question. When your body produces MTHFR normally, you're able to efficiently process homocysteine, an amino acid produced when protein breaks down. In most healthy humans, almost all homocysteine is converted into other substances that your body needs, so there's very little left in your bloodstream. When there's an MTHFR deficiency, your homocysteine levels are elevated, which is concerning because high levels of homocysteine can cause blood clots and damage arteries. An MTHFR deficiency also impairs your body's ability to convert folate into the form that your body can use. In fact, when consuming the same amount of folic acid, people who were homozygous for the MTHFR gene mutation had a 16% lower level of folate in their blood than those without a variant. This can be a big problem because your body needs folate to make red blood cells, produce RNA and DNA, and convert carbohydrates into energy. Specific MTHFR deficiency symptoms and risks include an increased risk of cardiovascular issues, including heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, and blood clots. Then there's homocystinuria, a disorder affecting the eyes, joints, and cognitive abilities. Then there's psychological and mental health issues, including mood swings, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Then there's frequent migraines. If you haven't checked out the Wellbe Guide to natural migraine remedies that actually work, definitely do on getwellbe.com. It's a great article. Then there's birth defects, specifically neural tube defects, which are severe birth defects of the brain and spine. Studies show that women who are homozygous for the MTHFR gene mutation are twice as likely to have a child with a neural tube defect. This is because folate is essential for proper neural development, which is why it's so important for pregnant women to take a prenatal vitamin with folate. Then there's recurrent miscarriages. Then there's certain cancers like leukemia and colon cancer. And then there's chronic pain and fatigue. So you can see a lot of different symptoms, some very serious, some not quite as much. If you're homozygous for a variant, you're much more likely to experience MTHFR deficiency and associated health problems than if you're heterozygous. But as I just mentioned, not everyone with an MTHFR gene mutation will have MTHFR deficiency or any symptoms. And of course, the conditions I just mentioned can have other root causes. That's why it's so important to get tested and do some investigating to find the root cause of your health concerns. Speaking of testing, let's get into the MTHFR gene mutation test. The mutation is not something that most of us get tested for normally. In fact, many people will go through their whole lives never knowing their MTHFR mutation status. And it won't make really any difference, but sometimes it makes sense to find out if you're a carrier of one of these common variants, especially if you're experiencing health issues and you learn that you have high homocysteine levels or low folate levels, or both. You could definitely benefit from an MTHFR gene mutation test. However, both elevated homocysteine and a folate deficiency have several other potential causes, just to make it more complicated. So it's important to try to unearth any other potential issues and understand that it doesn't exactly mean that you have this mutation just because somebody tells you you have high homocysteine levels or low folate levels. For instance, high homocysteine levels could be caused by nutritional deficiencies, hypothyroidism, diabetes, physical inactivity, smoking, obesity, kidney disease, psoriasis, and certain medications, specifically certain drugs that are used to treat cancer and high cholesterol. But if you've ruled out the different underlying causes or have a family history of MTHFR mutations, the next step is to get an MTHFR gene mutation test. The test will look for mutations in your MTHFR gene, specifically on the two locations I just mentioned, the C677T and the A1298C. If you go to a doctor for the test, it will be done by drawing a blood sample. You can also opt for an at-home testing kit like 23andMe or My Home MTHFR, which is a different testing kit. I used 23andMe and then uploaded my raw data to geneticgenie.org, which told me my MTHFR gene status. The results of your MTHFR gene mutation test will show you whether you're positive for a mutation. If you are, it will also show which of the two mutations you have and whether you're homozygous or heterozygous or double heterozygous, meaning that you have one mutation on each location, or double homozygous, meaning two mutations at both locations. I think it's important to stop and mention here that many professional medical bodies, including the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the College of American Pathologists, and the American College of Medical Genetics, as well as the American Heart Association, recommend against getting an MTHFR gene mutation test, citing a lack of evidence backing up a need for the test, as well as a lack of utility. And for many people, an MTHFR gene mutation test isn't necessary. However, in certain cases, like for those who are double homozygous and experiencing health issues, having some knowledge about your genetic status could be a powerful piece of information that you can utilize to begin to feel better. Having an MTHFR genetic mutation isn't a condition in and of itself. It's totally possible to live a healthy life and never even know that you have a mutation at all. But if you're a carrier of one of the mutations, it does decrease your ability to produce the MTHFR enzyme, which has the potential to lead to health issues, especially if you're homozygous. The good news is that these health issues can be easily prevented or reversed with some simple lifestyle changes and targeted MTHFR supplements. In terms of basic lifestyle choices, here's what could lower your risk of developing high homocysteine levels and other MTHFR-related problems. 1, stop smoking. If you needed one more reason why smoking is horrible for your body and your health, here it is. Research has shown an association between smoking and high homocysteine levels in those with an MTHFR gene mutation. Next, eat folate-rich foods. An MTHFR deficiency reduces your body's ability to process folate, so consuming a higher level of folate could offset this issue. Folate-rich foods include lentils, chickpeas, leafy greens, berries, nuts, and seeds. Then there's reduced stress. High levels of stress can exacerbate MTHFR gene mutation symptoms, so keep your stress in check by practicing meditation, getting regular exercise, taking the time for self-care, and making sure you're taking the time to check in with yourself and feel that things that come up are not going to break you, that you have good stress management tools and techniques. Taking specific supplements is one of the most powerful things you can do to reduce your chances of having any health problems related to an MTHFR deficiency. That's because the MTHFR gene mutation affects your ability to break down certain micronutrients that your body needs, and taking them in supplement form often allows you to skip that step. Here's what to look for when it comes to MTHFR supplements. You might have guessed the first one, folate. Having this mutation can lead to an MTHFR deficiency, and when you don't have enough of this enzyme, you can't properly process folate. To combat this, take a folate supplement that contains the most bioavailable form of folate, which is methylated folate. This can help your body absorb this crucial nutrient more easily. This is especially important for pregnant women, as folate deficiencies can lead to serious birth defects. Then there's B vitamins. The MTHFR gene mutation is most known for affecting levels of folate, which is vitamin B9, but it's also associated with other B vitamin deficiencies. To offset this, take a B complex that contains B12, B6, and riboflavin, which is B2. Next, choline. Research shows that the MTHFR gene mutation is also associated with low levels of the nutrient choline. Taking a choline supplement can help. It's also in many multivitamins, so check yours and see if you have choline already, or if you feel you need to take extra, you can get choline alone. Then there's N-acetylcysteine, known as NAC. Cysteine is an amino acid that can help lower homocysteine levels, and it's found in high-protein foods like chicken, turkey, yogurt, legumes, and eggs. But those with an MTHFR mutation would be wise to up their intake by taking it in supplement form, and as I mentioned, it's known as NAC. You can take all of the supplements I just mentioned separately, or you can opt to buy a specifically designed MTHFR supplement, which will contain a number of different nutrients that will help prevent MTHFR gene mutation symptoms. Either way, be sure to check out the getwellbe non-toxic product database for vetted, curated, medical-grade supplement brand recommendations, including everything I just mentioned. All right, so in summary, the MTHFR gene mutation is widely misunderstood. Here's what to remember about what it means for your health. First, MTHFR is an enzyme that converts folate into the form your body can use and breaks down the amino acid homocysteine. The MTHFR gene is the gene that gives your body instructions on how to produce the MTHFR enzyme. When part of the DNA sequence on your MTHFR gene is different from what's expected, it's called a mutation or a variant. On the MTHFR gene, there are two common variants called, again, these are just numbers, but they're just how genes are named. So C677T and A1298C. Because a gene is a set of two alleles, one from each parent, it's possible to have two mutations, one mutation, or no mutation. Having one mutation is known as being heterozygous, and having two mutations is known as being homozygous. Being homozygous increases your risk of having health issues related to the mutation. Having an MTHFR gene mutation doesn't necessarily mean you'll have any health issues. However, because it can impact production of the MTHFR enzyme, it can lead to an MTHFR deficiency, which has the potential to cause problems associated with high homocysteine levels and low levels of folate and other essential micronutrients. MTHFR gene mutation symptoms and risks include increased risk of cardiovascular issues, psychological and mental health issues, frequent migraines, birth defects, recurrent miscarriages, certain cancers, and chronic pain and fatigue. Most people don't need to get an MTHFR gene mutation test because most people are not homozygous. However, if you're experiencing health issues that you think might be related to an MTHFR mutation, and tests show that you have high homocysteine levels and low levels of folate, it could be helpful to be tested. You can get a test from a doctor or use an at-home testing kit like 23andMe or My Home MTHFR. If you're a carrier for an MTHFR gene mutation, making certain lifestyle changes can reduce your risk of having any health issues. Eating a healthy diet full of folate-rich foods, reducing stress, and quitting smoking can all help. And then lastly, MTHFR supplements can also be helpful in preventing any MTHFR gene mutation symptoms. You can take a specific MTHFR supplement, which will have multiple different nutrients related to MTHFR within it, or you can take individual supplements that I mentioned. And then definitely check out the WellBe non-toxic product database on getwellbe.com for vetted, curated, medical-grade supplement brand recommendations with an easy click to places online where you can purchase them safely. The most important nutrients to supplement are folate, B6, B12, riboflavin, choline, and NAC. Now, I want to know, have you been tested for an MTHFR variant or know someone who has? Did you discover that you have a mutation, whether it's heterozygous or homozygous? If so, what'd you do about it? Let me know in the comments on the article version of this episode on getwellbe.com, and you'll find a link in the show notes. It's always so helpful to us and the WellBe community to hear when you've triumphed over something and how you did it, or what you're struggling with, and perhaps it will help somebody else in their journey. Also, while you're there, become a WellBe Insider so that you can get all of our latest content, special offers, and personal notes I don't share anywhere else weekly in your inbox. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my audio guide on how to feel the best you've ever felt and heal anything. The 10 things you need to optimize your health and heal any health issue, big or small, naturally. Even if you're the healthiest person out there, I promise you'll learn something you didn't know before that can help you optimize your health. I'll see you back here next week for another episode of the WellBe Podcast. If you haven't already and found this episode helpful or interesting, subscribe to the podcast. This way you'll never miss a new episode and they'll be delivered to you whenever we publish a new one. And please share this episode with family or friends who you think might find it valuable and informative. It means a lot and helps more people find the podcast. If you already have, then thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Once again, this is your host, Adrienne Nolan-Smith, and thanks for listening to the WellBe Podcast.